eyes when I gave the word. Now in the morning I sleep alone. Sweep the streets I used to own.
I'm Barack Hussein Obama.
I used to roll the dice, feel the fear in my enemy's eyes, listen as the crowd would sing. Now the old king is dead, long live the king. One minute I held the key, next the walls were closed on me, and I discovered that my castle stand upon pillars of salt and pillars of sand. I hear Jerusalem bells are ringing, Roman cavalry choirs are singing. Be my mirror, my sword and shield, my missionaries in a foreign field. For some reason I can't explain, once you've gone it was never, never an honest word. And that was when I ruled the world. It was the wicked and wild wind, blew down the doors to let me in, shattered windows and the sound of drums. People couldn't believe what I'd become. Revolutionaries wait for my head on a silver plate, just a puppet on a lonely string. Oh, who would ever want to be king? I hear Jerusalem bells are ringing, Roman cavalry choirs are singing. Be my mirror, my sword and shield, my missionaries in a foreign field. For some reason I can't explain, I know St. Peter won't call my name, never an honest word. But that was when I ruled the world.
No matter who you are or what you do, every aspect of your life is governed by the law. It controls where you can walk and where you can't, when you can drink and how much, how you're expected to behave in public. And yet, even though it's so important, hardly any of us have got a clue how it came into being. In this series, I'm going to try and find out where our laws came from, who made them, and why. I'll be on a fascinating and sometimes bizarre journey that'll take me from trials by ordeal. Imagine the damage that would have caused to your hand. Through the decapitation of a king, to the emergence of modern democracy. Over the next 4 programmes, I'll see how the Normans created the first surveillance society, how today's compensation culture was started by the Anglo-Saxons,
Loss of an eye, 50 shillings, or today £5,000.
and how a man whose body's kept in a London cupboard inspired us to stop stringing people up and start banging them up instead. The law we live with today has been 2,000 years in the making, and it's still work in progress. And though we can't assume that laws will always change for the better, at least if we know where the law came from, we can keep an eye on where it's going.
The 60s were all about miniskirts and rock and roll, or were they? I'm going to show you the real 60s. No myths, no stereotypes. What we really wore, what we really listened to, and who we really fancied. Join me for Scylla's On Swung 60s.
The 60s are the iconic decade. We're told that there was nothing quite like it before, and nothing was ever the same again. The myth of the 60s was created before the decade was out. What we have lived with ever since is a mirage, a mass hallucination. Something had changed in the early 60s. We questioned the old ways. Soon, we would throw them all out. The 60s became a titanic struggle between the young and the old, the established versus the untried.
One of the curious things which the 60s invented the culture of youth, this idea that young people were interesting, which they're basically not, actually.
The dream of the future, extinguishing the memory of the past. Now, satire challenged everything. It became more important to be against something than to be for it.
A November morning in the churned battlefields of Flanders and northern France. 4 British platoons are making their way through the mud. Each stops at a mass grave and digs up one body. At midnight, a British general is blindfolded. Three days later, on the 11th of November 1920, the chosen coffin was carried in full military procession through the streets of London. In a solemn ceremony, the body was then buried deep in the sand below Westminster Abbey.
The tomb of the unknown warrior is a supremely democratic memorial. Millions of bereaved people could half believe that the person buried here was their own father, husband, son, brother, or friend. At the time, some people thought it was too democratic, almost a bit common. But the so-called Great War touched people in these islands in a way that no conflict, really since the brutal civil wars of the 17th century, had done. First, of course, the millions who actually fought, but also the millions at home who felt the full force of modern warfare for the first time. Bereaved, bombed, uprooted or bankrupted. Now, we know that the war to end all wars didn't, but it tore up Europe and it changed the great story of the British people forever.
Hidden in a forest in what is now the eastern part of Poland near the border with Russia, lie the remains of a concrete town. For 3 crucial years during World War II, this was home to one of the most infamous figures in world history. A man who said he and the nation he led would create an empire which would outlast any other.
Genau wie die Väter einst auch Deutschland nicht des Söldner hielten, sondern selbst nicht schaffen. Eigenen Trotz, eigene Herrlichkeit.
Here at the Wolf's Lair, his headquarters in the forest of Rastenburg, in what was then part of German East Prussia, Adolf Hitler took decisions which shaped the course of World War II. The result was a level of destruction and suffering unprecedented in the history of war. $55 million people died in World War II. The Germans took 5 million Russian prisoners of war alone. Only 2 million survived. And during the war, Hitler authorized a policy unique in all history: the mechanized extermination of an entire people. All this was possible because the Nazis ruled Germany. How could it be that a cultured nation at the heart of Europe ever allowed such a man and the Nazi party he led to come to power? Leading Nazis explained their success easily. It was inevitable given what they called the superhuman qualities of their leader, Adolf Hitler. But the true reasons for the Nazis' rise to power are not that simple, and are much more alarming.
Hey! History! I love history! Something happens, then later something else happens. So sequential. Thank you, first guy, for writing history down. Let's stop